Breaking news, less than a year after the coronavirus was discovered in China, Britain approves the first vaccine, a major milestone in the West. So is this the beginning of the end of the pandemic? Presidential pardons, who's on the list, and Salesforce buys Slack. Here's what you need to know. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need2Know podcast for Wednesday, December 2nd. I'm Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. Hey, Carlo.
Hey, Jill. Good morning. How are you?
Hey, good morning. Big news this morning. The UK has approved Pfizer and BioNTech's coronavirus vaccine, jumping ahead of the U.S. to become the first Western country to give the go-ahead for a shot that could amount to the beginning of the end of the pandemic. Prime Minister Boris Johnson says this vaccine will be made available to the most vulnerable populations starting early next week. Meanwhile, here in the U.S., the CDC is expected to formally recommend that healthcare workers and nursing home residents and staff, that's about 24 million people in total, will be the first to get vaccinated once approval comes down from the FDA. And then from there, it will be up to individual governors to figure out what the priorities will be and how to distribute the vaccine, how it's all going to work. So, Carlo, we are getting closer to putting this pandemic in our rearview mirror. Unfortunately, it's going to be a really rough couple of months until we get there. But you know, amazing scientific work here.
From your lips, Jill. I mean, look, this is a day to celebrate. This is truly amazing. I mean, I may get emotional. It's that it's really that I know it's in the UK, but still, I mean, this is incredible. We just can't say it enough. Like the medical breakthroughs that we're witnessing they're going to go down in history, and we're lucky enough in some ways to be able to tell people that we were here for it. We witnessed it. We reported on it. We talked about it. It's awesome. That said, just to bring my inner cynic out for a second, I'm not exactly sure why Britain got to beat us to the punch on this. Like, I know that the FDA has meetings coming up on the schedule about approving these vaccines. I'm not exactly sure why don't they just they're on the schedule for like a week from now, but why not just do them now? Right? If there's ever a time to prioritize something.
I asked this same question. It was like they have this scheduled meeting for December 10th. Like, how about December 2nd? What are you doing? But then I was talking about this with Brad Smith on Cheddar. He's an anchor at Cheddar. And he was saying he thinks that maybe they're reviewing the data now. Like, he thinks that this is part of the process. But I was also perplexed as to, what is the delay? What's the delay here? I mean, to me, every day counts. We're losing about 2,000 people a day, 2,000 lives. I mean,
exactly,
we're at nearly 200,000 new infections. It's just, I don't know. I agree with you. A lot of questions though. How long, of course, does this vaccine keep you protected? Will you need a new vaccine every year, kind of like the flu vaccine? What, if any, adverse side effects could we see long term, right? Or when millions of people wind up getting the vaccination. Yeah. And we still don't have any data on kids. The vaccine hasn't been tested on anyone really under the age of 12. So that's still, a big question mark here that I think about, of course, as a parent. But still, again, huge news, but a lot of questions.
That is a good point about the kids. I hadn't thought about that. Do kids get flu vaccines? They do, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I was reading into the sort of on a little bit of a different note, but I was reading into the Moderna vaccine the other day, which is the other mRNA vaccine. This is similar to the Pfizer vaccine that was just approved overseas. They actually made it in 2 days back in January. The rest of the time has been, testing, doing the trials, et cetera. But the actual medical breakthrough using this mRNA technology, it took 2 days, and they did it in January. It's incredible. I know there's a lot of ethical concerns vis-a-vis human challenge trials, and I think we've talked about these in the past. Human challenge trials are where you purposely infect willing volunteers with the virus in order to sort of speed up the vaccine trials. Imagine if we did that, back in the spring. I'm not saying we should have. I don't know enough. I'm not a medical ethicist. But what I'm trying to say is the reason that it took even as long as it did is because we basically they had to wait until a certain number of people got infected, naturally via the course of their lives. If you could figure out a way to cut that down, you could be talking about vaccines, for future coronaviruses in weeks or months, rather than a year. And that's not to take away anything from just how fantastic and historic this news is, but it's just something I was thinking about yesterday.
In other news, Attorney General Bill Barr says the Justice Department has not uncovered any evidence of widespread voter fraud that would change the results of the election. So he is now the most prominent Trump ally and member of the administration to dispute the president's claims that the election was stolen from him. Barr has also revealed that he appointed a special counsel last month to investigate the origins of the Russia probe.
Oh, the Russia probe. When you just say those words, I get the chills. I'm like, if I never have to talk about Russia again, I'll be happy. The special prosecutor thing is it's like a little piece of candy you give your toddler after you force him to take his medicine. It's like, okay, if you agree to admit that you lost the election, I'll give you a little treat in the form of an investigation into Bob Mueller. But this, I think the question here is what happens to Bill Barr. I think if I were able to revise my predictions from Monday, which under the rules instituted by me I cannot do, I would say that President Trump fires Bill Barr and appoints Rudy Giuliani as Attorney General for like the last few weeks. By the way, Jill, the word on the street is that the president is going to announce he is running for president in 2024 on Inauguration Day. I don't know how true that is, but those are the rumors. And if that happens, that's effectively going to freeze the entire GOP field. It'll be really interesting to see if he does that, how it affects other people who are going to run, because nobody's going to want to be the guy or person to come out and be like, okay, I'm going to run against the former president. But
right, what does that mean for Nikki Haley and some of these other names that we've been hearing about? So just to follow up, we were talking yesterday about those just nonstop spam emails from the Trump campaign, from Democrats also. The president raised more than $170 million, actually, according to the New York Times, appealing those false election claims. And most of it goes to his PAC. So if this is true, right, and on Inauguration Day he says that he's going to be running again in 2024, he's already starting way ahead because he's got millions and millions of dollars. There's also some reporting from NBC News that Trump said he will not be at the inauguration. He's not going to go. He's not inviting Biden to the White House, as presidents traditionally do. So clearly just breaking with precedent here.
I think the one question there. No, sorry, Jill. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna ramble.
No, I was just gonna say, I think that, I don't think anybody ever thought that he was gonna go to the inauguration. I do think it'll be interesting if Pence goes. That's sort of that's the thing, because Vice President Pence is more of like a traditional establishment politician. I think that he would, but it'll be interesting to see if he follows the president's lead or if he sort of says, look, it's our responsibility to do like an actual handoff to the new administration.
I think it's just such a bad look. I mean, if you're we talk about it all the time, but like what a sore loser. You won't even go. You won't go to the inauguration as has been done by every president before you. You're not going to invite him. Look, Biden has spent more time in the White House than probably most president-elects, right. But it's not like he needs a tour.
Doesn't need a tour.
But it would still just be a nice signal that this democracy is going to move forward. But speaking of Rudy Giuliani, quickly, President Trump apparently has been discussing whether to grant preemptive pardons to his children, Eric, Ivanka, and Don Jr., his son-in-law Jared Kushner, as well as his lawyer Rudy Giuliani, according to the New York Times. The president also said to be concerned that the Justice Department under President-elect Biden could target his 3 eldest children. So those pardons, if they were granted, would not extend to the ongoing investigation by the Manhattan DA into the Trump Organization, because that wouldn't be a federal matter. So anything state-related, right. Also not included. On a lighter note, ABC News is reporting that the Trump administration has been getting calls left and right, inundated with calls from people to pardon, right? Either people asking for pardons for themselves, for their loved ones, including the Tiger King himself.
Really? That guy? Oh, that's good. Yeah, it would be fun, I think, to pardon people in your last days in office. I think Bill Clinton holds the record. He pardoned like hundreds of people on his last day, or last couple of days.
Do you think
Separately,
he's going to pardon himself?
that's a good question. That's a good question. I
Like
don't
a
know.
preemptive pardon for himself?
I wouldn't put it past him. Um, Separately, Jill, I did want to mention this before we move on. The Justice Department investigating whether an unnamed federal convict offered a bribe to the White House in exchange for a presidential pardon. This is according to heavily redacted court documents that were released last night. I read through these. It's hard to tell who this person is because of all the redactions, and nothing ties Trump directly to the alleged scheme. No one has been charged. But to your point, there's a lot of people out there who are willing to pay big bucks for a presidential pardon.
Switching gears, a very big acquisition in the booming cloud computing market. As expected, Salesforce.com announced that it is buying Slack for $27 billion. This is the largest acquisition ever for the cloud giants, one of the largest ever for the software industry. Slack, if you're not familiar, is a workplace chat tool. It was popular long before the pandemic, but it has become essential for a lot of companies in this work from home era.
Yeah, we use it. Slack is one of those things that like you and I think of it as it's just like part of our lives because we're on it all day. But like my dad the other day when we were at Thanksgiving, I don't know how this came up, but he asked, he was like, "What is Slack? I always hear about this thing." It's like if you don't use it, you're like, oh, I don't know what this is. It's just, what is it, like another way to IM people? But anyway, this deal does put Salesforce head to head against Microsoft, which has its own similar product called Teams. But as I said, we use Slack at Cheddar. It's great in a lot of ways, I have to say. But I do have my issues. And if you're wondering what those are, which I'm sure you are not.
I am, actually.
My problem with Slack, Jill, is that the idea, I think, is it's supposed to sort of like replace email, right? But it doesn't actually replace email.
It is the stated goal. It is that is sort of their goal for initially when they launched.
And I think if it did that, that'd be one thing, but it doesn't. It's just another thing you got to monitor. I want less things to monitor, right? I want some software company to figure out less things that I got to look at all day. I also don't like the emoji. I don't like when people do, how you can respond to things with like a little emoji, like a thumbs up or like a, happy face or whatever. That's a whole thing that I'm really not into, whether it's on Slack or in IMs, or not IMs, text messages. You know how like you'll on iMessage you'll send a text to somebody and they'll give you like the thumbs up?
Yeah,
I don't like that. It's like write to me, right? The least you can do is write back.
It's interesting. When I first came to Cheddar, that was the first place I worked where we used Slack, because I'd always worked at traditional news companies which just used email as a way to communicate. And I will say, I would go on vacation and come back to 1,000 emails. Yeah. Here, your inbox is not inundated for the most part. Yeah. With work emails, I get a lot of pitches from PR companies, but my work email is not inundated by, colleagues and coworkers. I do think, though, that there are too many places to monitor. Like sometimes I think, just say we're thinking about something for the podcast, and I'm thinking, where did we communicate that? So I have to go through Slack, and then I have to go through my emails, then I go through my text messages, and then Slack itself is there's quirks to it. You don't know, like, organizationally, it's hard, I think, sometimes to find things, but big news for Salesforce. They had tried originally to buy LinkedIn many years ago. Microsoft eventually bought LinkedIn. They kind of want to become like this one-stop shop, I think, for workplace solutions. So we'll see. A lot of the thinking is that they way overpaid for this, though.
Seems like a lot of money.
Yeah, like Slack has been doing well since the pandemic started, but not nearly as well as Zoom, for example. So the thinking here is that perhaps they paid too much. But you know what? You never know, right? Like, this is one of those things. This company, Slack, not really that profitable yet. It's still relatively new. So I think the jury's still out whether or not this was a good purchase on the part of Salesforce.
I mean, I remember when Facebook bought Instagram for $1 billion, and people were like, "What are they, crazy?
Exactly.
$1 billion? It's just a photo app." It's like, yeah, who's laughing now?
Meanwhile, Spotify has released its year-end Wrapped lists for 2020. The year's most streamed artist is Bad Bunny, followed by Drake and J Balvin. Billie Eilish is the most streamed female artist, followed by Taylor Swift and Ariana Grande. The Joe Rogan Experience, which Spotify bought for $100 million, or they acquired it a few months ago. It's the most streamed podcast. Rogan becomes exclusive to Spotify this month, by the way, Carlo. We're still waiting for our $100 million podcast deal, right?
Yeah, keep waiting, I think. But hey, who knows, right? These lists, though, these Spotify most streamed lists, they always make me feel so old. Like, I know who Bad Bunny is, but I had no idea how popular he was. 8 billion streams. That's unbelievable. If you've ever actually looked at, do you ever look at like the top songs on Spotify or Apple Music? It's like
Occasionally.
There was a time not long ago when I would be able to recite the lyrics to like the top 10 songs on any chart. Like I was that in tune with like the popular culture. Now I don't even recognize half the artists. It's like, it's such an old man thing to say. But I guess that's how it goes, right?
Well, the crazy thing about Drake is that he's on the top of this list, but he didn't have an album or anything this year. He didn't really come out with any new music.
Yeah, that's true.
He's just, I guess, that popular. There are times when you go to, because I'm a runner, so that's usually when if you want to feel old, I actually now listen to podcasts while I run, which is like the next level of just insanity. But when I used to listen to music when I was a real runner and doing a lot of long distance, sometimes Drake would be like 8 of the top 10 songs. You're like,
right,
what is going on with this guy?
He's getting
incredible.
paid. That's what's going on.
Okay, how about some free food? Well, the McRib is back, and it's free under the condition that you shave. Okay, McDonald's making the cult favorite barbecued sandwich available at all of its locations in the U.S. starting today. They're going to give away 10,000 McRibs to customers who post pictures of their clean-shaven or baby-smooth faces and tag hashtag Shave for McRib sweepstakes. Baker Machado and I were talking about this yesterday on Cheddar. It's a little sexist because women aren't shaving their beards. So what, are women just totally excluded from this? I guess the idea is that it follows Movember, right?
Right, yeah.
But
yeah.
And I guess like a beard is not really conducive to eating a saucy McRib. But I guess women can't really. I don't know what's the ruling on women.
I think you can post like a picture of somebody else. I mean, it's a partnership with No Shave November, which of course is a very good charity that promotes cancer research. But I don't know the answer to your question. But have you ever had one of these McRibs? It looks repulsive. I've never had one. People love them, but the picture of it is really kind of disgusting. Also, speaking of free food, Jill, Starbucks giving away a tall free coffee to healthcare workers for the entire month of December, if you haven't heard. Any frontline workers, hospital staff, they can just identify as such, and they will get a free brew. Very nice gesture from Starbucks there.
Absolutely. It's not every year that you get a marquee NFL matchup in the middle of the day on a Wednesday, but today's Steelers-Ravens matchup is still on, despite 2 more positive COVID tests on the Ravens. Baltimore's had 10 straight days of positive tests as they prepare to take on the undefeated Steelers. Both teams in Pittsburgh, kickoff set for 3:40 Eastern time.
Yeah, the reason it's so early is because NBC has this game and they need it to end in time for them to air the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree lighting, which is tonight. And on that note, Jill, if you plan on or if you're in New York, or if you plan on visiting New York to see the tree this year, which I know a lot of people do, just be advised, it's a whole production this year. You have to wait in line. There's timed tickets. You're only allowed to look at it for like 5 minutes. This is one of my favorite New York City traditions, but I think it's probably best to just probably skip the tree this year for safety's sake.
I've heard they've really spruced it up, no pun intended, because if you saw the pictures, it was not. Yeah, it was rough going for that. Something happened to that tree. I don't understand. Was it just a metaphor for 2020? Why did that tree not? What happened on the route to New York?
Did you work at 30 Rock when you were at NBC, or
I did.
Or were you in New Jersey?
Both. I've done both.
Because I remember when I worked in that building, I would walk in the morning and I would see them putting it was hilarious because they literally, it's like a Frankenstein. They like put it together, right? There's like it comes off the flatbed truck looking atrocious, and then they sort of do like surgery on it to make it look like this beautiful beautiful Christmas tree. So I thought it was funny when people were ragging on it this year, because it's like that's kind of always how they do it.
You know what? I didn't realize that, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did work at 30 Rock, and yeah, it was just crazy how packed it would be in terms of the tourists and the crowds. And I used to just think, I mean, I would like count down for the season to be over, because it was hard to actually get around.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, it was that crowded in Rockefeller Plaza, but I long for those days.
But the thing is, Jill, it's I don't miss that, but I do. Retailers are on a serious note really going to hurt, I think, from this, because I mean, Midtown Manhattan is just a major economic engine for this whole country, and when you don't have big, the lack of tourists in New York right now is really, really hurting. So we just got these companies just got to hold on. These stores got to hold on for a few more months. I don't know if there's going to be any more federal help coming, but
we didn't talk about it, but there actually was progress on a slimmed down deal on a stimulus package. We should do an update tomorrow.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it doesn't. The last I read was that it doesn't sound like McConnell basically said they're not going to do it, but at least they were trying. There was a bipartisan group of senators yesterday who put together a $900 billion stimulus deal. So at least somebody is attempting to do something, which is better than nothing.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Everyone have a great day. That's what you need to know for Wednesday, December 2nd.
Bye, guys.